Coming to get you, Bobber.
What has got Nards?
Hi guys, my name's Barry and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing a review for Eden Lake from 2008. I went to the cinema to see this back in 2008 and I didn't really know what I was expecting because I only saw one trailer for it. And usually when you get British horror movies, you don't get the best trailers for these movies. So I didn't know anyone in the movie. I didn't even know who Kelly Riley was or Michael Fassbender. I just went into it because it was a British horror movie, and at the time some British horror movies were pretty good, so I thought, let's give this one a chance. This movie is basically about a couple that go on what's supposed to be a romantic weekend together because Steve, played by Michael Fassbender, is going to propose to his girlfriend Jenny, and he takes her to this lake that he knows about. He's been before, but it's kind of overrun now by these local youths. I call them Neds in Scotland, and in England they call them chavs. So these kind of chavvy Neds have kind of taken over, and the parents don't really care about their kids. They don't wonder where they are or anything. So that's basically the basic premise, and it's a kind of a back and forth between these Neds, chavs, and the couple. Being from the UK myself, I found this film very realistic in terms of the confrontations with these Neds, just the interactions with them, experiencing like having to run away from them. You know, it was a common theme for me when I was younger, and then just watching this film, it just kind of brought it all back when I was younger. I was obviously never attacked in the way that this couple was attacked in this movie, but it just felt so realistic to me. I don't know if it's the same in the US or anywhere else around the world for you guys, but being a British film and being from Britain myself, I've experienced this sort of thing in the UK by these types of people, and it's just not nice at all. The foreshadowing of how this movie is going to play out happens at the very beginning of the movie. You've got the couple driving to the lake, and then you can hear on the radio about how kids have been disobedient and the parents are doing nothing about it, and it goes on for a couple of minutes, and some people may not pay attention to it, but because I've seen the movie, after I watch it again and again, you pay more attention to what's happening on the radio, and they are just talking about these kids are just getting out of hand, nobody's doing anything about it, they're overtaking some places, and that's exactly what happens in the film. After we find out there are kids in this little town that are just kind of running amok, you get Steve and Jenny that go to this diner, and again it's established well from the beginning that these kids, in quote, can do no wrong. And you've heard that time and time again from parents where you probably live, parents where I live. Jenny's a teacher as well, so she's heard it over and over again as a teacher. You know, she'll probably give kids into trouble and the parents will come in and they'll say, oh, my kid can do no wrong. It's just a common theme here in the UK that's the get out clause for some parents who don't really care or don't know what their kids are up to, and that again is the common theme for this movie. Jenny and Steve were very fleshed out characters. You've got Steve who borrows a truck to go and take Jenny out in this romantic weekend. Steve, he doesn't always talk about his boss, but you can kind of tell that he's a doer rather than a sayer. He does what he's told by his boss. So when Steve is confronted by these Neds, he doesn't want to look a fool because I don't know why Jenny does this, but she looks at Steve as if to say, are you going to do something about it? So Steve being Steve, he kind of has to do something about it, and that's where the confrontation begins. Whereas Jenny, she is a teacher and she can tell the way that kids act. She knows how boisterous they can be, and even Steve says they're kind of boisterous as well. So I think it's good that we get that fleshed out character development between Steve and Jenny before the confrontation begins. We're then introduced to the kids. Thomas Turgoose and Jack O'Connell are the only ones that I knew from This Is England at the time when I first watched the movie. Obviously they're famous now, but Jack O'Connell played Brett. He's the leader of this gang of youths, and as much as he was phenomenal in the role, I really hated him as a character in the film. He was absolutely psychotic all the way through the movie. And as sad as it sounds, he, as a character, is someone I have bumped into time and time again as a teenager. You always get that type of person in a group of youths, the leader of the gang, the one that wants to tell you to do things so that he doesn't have to, and he gets away with it all the time. Obviously, it's amped up in this film, but he is a realistic leader of a Ned group. The issues between the couple and the Neds start out with kind of playful awkwardness that they kind of take too far, and then it turns into tormenting when they take the car and the keys and they do things that really shouldn't be doing. And then the confrontation, the major confrontation where Steve goes and asks for the keys back. He asks nicely until they start really getting on him, just being really annoying, and accidentally the dog dies. When I say accidentally, he's defending himself. The dog gets stabbed by Steve by accident because he had to take the knife off the kids. Kids being kids, they know that they're in the wrong, but they pretend that they think that he's in the wrong, and that's when the big confrontation begins. It becomes a cat and mouse chase between Steve and Jenny and the Neds. After that, I genuinely couldn't believe what I saw for the rest of the movie. Steve was captured by the Neds and he was tortured by the Neds, and the way it happened, again, sadly, it was so realistic. You've got Brett getting one of the people to film what they were doing so that it was filmed on camera, so he wasn't the only one that was going to get taken down for this, and he got all of them to take their part in tormenting Steve by stabbing him and slashing him. Very hard to watch stuff, and at that point I thought Steve was a goner. But it just goes to show that Brett, being the leader, was smart as well. He knew what he was doing. He knew that what he was doing was wrong as well, but he still wanted to do it because he was that type of person. And it was instilled into him at a young age, which we'll get to. But he was obviously very smart. He didn't want to be the only one to be blamed for this. But even though he was getting them all to do it, and he felt like he wouldn't get the blame, of course he wouldn't be the only one. But in a court of law, he's the leader. He would get the most blame for it anyway. But it was a hard to watch scene. Luckily for Steve, he got away at that point. And when Steve got away, I was hoping that he would survive, because he was one of these characters that was so built up that you couldn't help but just root for him. Obviously, you're going to root for characters like that anyway, against characters like Brett. But you just really you had the will and the hope that he was going to survive. And then Jenny does find him. Now, it is a horror film. Horror films are never acknowledged by the Academy or anything like that. But there was one scene when Jenny took him into this little shack to try and patch him up. They both saw that he was dying and he had black blood coming out. It was coming out his gut. And at that point, she found out that he was going to propose to her. The ring and the box for the ring fell out his pocket. And the way he acted and the way she acted, if you saw a scene like that in a non-horror movie, those two would be up for Academy Awards. But they weren't, because they were unknown and it was a horror movie at the end of the day. But that scene was so impactful because sadly Steve died. He didn't die there, but you knew he was going to die. How he was going to die, we didn't know at that point. But that scene, at that point, if you didn't hate the Neds enough, you thought, right, okay, she has to not only escape, but get her own back. After being captured yet again, Jenny and Steve were tied up, but unfortunately Steve was already dead at this point. And then they set Steve alight so that she would obviously burn as well. So sick, but again, it happens in real life, which is terrible. Luckily, she manages to get away. After she does get away, though, and finding out that Steve has been killed at the hands of these little Neds, these little youths, it starts to turn into this kind of revenge film. It's a revenge. At first it was a survival film, but this is like a revenge survival movie for Jenny alone. And she manages to kill a few of them. Not the ones that we wanted her to kill, but she does kill a few of them. But again, she has remorse because of the type of person she is, the type of job that she has. It was hard-hitting stuff every time that she had to defend herself, but she did, and she did it in a brutal way. Now, this is where we get to the even more frustrating part of the movie. She bumps into a guy in a car and she finally gets help, only to find out that this guy was the brother of Brett and he was out looking for him. She steals the car and she gets away, not before she knocks down the girl, Ned, which was fantastic, by the way. But she gets away and it pans out with this ending music, almost like that's it, finished. And if it finished like that, I hated it because Brett got away with it, but at the same time I was glad she got away. But the car crashed and I was like, oh no, what's happening now? Are we still going to get to see the demise of Brett, which would be good? But she finds the closest house to her and she manages to get help, and I thought, okay, she's getting help, let's see what happens. Only to find out that it was Brett's parents' house that she was at. And as soon as I found that out, I was like, oh no, Brett's on his way back to the house with his brother to tell, or I don't even know if he was going to tell, but to hide the fact that his friends were killed. He killed one of his friends as well, but obviously never said anything. But he got back to the house, and before he got back to the house, she knew what was happening. So she locked herself in the bathroom, and just the angles and the sound in that scene was absolutely frightening. You know, you've got her in the bathroom knowing what's happening, and she could hear the commotion outside when Brett came in the house to say that this girl killed his friends. Everyone was screaming, banging on the door to get into her bathroom. She got a knife and she was preparing herself for this. And then when they bashed through the bathroom door, all the parents were standing and doing what the kids were doing. So the kids are obviously influenced very easily to what the parents would do in real life. And this is it. This is how the parents react. And it comes full circle. And it's not a good lesson, but it is a lesson learned in this whole film that you're easily influenced as a kid and you act upon what your parents do. And these parents are just the exact same as the kids. They don't know what to do. They're protecting their kids who done wrong, but they're protecting their kids and they can't let Jenny away and unfortunately they kill her. We don't see it happen on screen, but we can tell that that's what happens. But the most frustrating part of this whole movie was after she's killed and Brett knowing that she's getting killed by his own parents, he goes into his bedroom, he deletes all the videos, deletes all the evidence of what he'd done, and he takes Steve's sunglasses, sticks them on, and smirks in that mirror. And I thought, oh, so frustrating. Although this was a frustrating film, it was a very brilliant movie. It was a movie that was so realistic that it can happen in real life, and it does happen in real life, especially here in the UK. But I think that's the scariest part of the film, knowing that it's something that could happen, knowing that there are people in this world like Brett, there are people in the world like Brett's parents as well. So it's a lesson learned for everyone when you watch this movie. It was so visceral, so brutal, so realistic, and it was a fantastic film. Very well acted by everyone. The Neds, Steve and Jenny, everyone. It was so well acted, so brilliant. One of the best horror films I've ever seen. So if you've seen this movie, guys, leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think of it. But also, anyone from the UK watching or anywhere around the world, have you experienced anything like this? Not to the level that we saw in the movie, but have you experienced a time where you've been confronted by these types of youths, Neds, chavs, whatever you call them around the world? Have you been, in that situation before? Leave your comments down below, guys. Let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.